Joining us now is Matt Whitaker, former acting Attorney General, and James R. Fitzgerald, retired FBI supervisory special agent and a criminal profiler. Matt, I want to get back to this letter from Routh. Again, we are for transparency, but releasing that with the bounty reference in the letter, does that make sense?
Well, good to be with you, Laura. It makes no sense. In fact, it's incredibly dangerous, irresponsible, and shows a really poor judgment being exercised by at least the U.S. Attorney's Office, but most likely all of the Department of Justice. You know, they could have redacted that information. They could have submitted it in camera or had a hearing outside of public view. But this information to be out there was purposeful, and that makes you kind of question all of these decisions because they always seem to make the decision that harms President Trump the most.
Well, here's what agents found also in Ruth's car. 6 cell phones. One of them contained a Google search of how to travel from Palm Beach County to Mexico. They also found 12 pairs of gloves, 2 license plates, a Hawaii driver's license in the defendant's name, and a passport in his name. They also found a notebook with dozens of pages filled with names and phone numbers pertaining to Ukraine, discussions about how to join combat on behalf of Ukraine, and notes criticizing the governments of China and Russia. James, does this sound like right off the bat, and you kind of get this sense from the FBI, and certainly in the Butler case, but in this case, like a lone wolf to you?
You know, I've been asked that question a lot about killers and mass shooters over the years. I don't think there are too many actual lone wolves out there anymore. I think Kaczynski, the Unabomber, may have been truly the last one holed up in his cabin in the early days of the internet without it. Everybody out there now undertaking these types of crimes, these offenses, they're surrounded by like-minded souls on the internet, dark web, wherever they go. And I think Routh is no different in this particular case. So he may have been operating on his own that very day, laying prone position outside the golf course, but he's been influenced by lots of other people. I see him also as sort of a poor man's James Bond, you know, from Ukraine with Love would be his movie. I mean, he's bouncing all around in the international world, trying to kind of coerce his belief system. But obviously it didn't work. And also why the DOJ and FBI put those words in that particular affidavit today, I don't understand either. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, well, again, at a time, Matt, where the FBI and the Secret Service desperately needs to bolster its credibility, to release that letter, and then we find out that he was at these locations on multiple times, surveilling or casing the joints, as they would say, and nobody notices. That's also just very odd, especially since he should have been on everybody's radar given his past.
He absolutely should have been on the radar. Remember, you know, they should have been protecting President Trump all along based on the threat and not on his position as a former president. And, you know, obviously they continue to increase his protection, but it's still failing. And now, you know, the FBI puts out and Department of Justice puts out this manifesto and suggests that there's now a bounty on President Trump's head. You know, I'm glad that it looks like people are getting serious about protecting President Trump, but at the same time, you know, it's too late. There's already been 2 assassination attempts on his life.
Well, what I see in all of this is, Mr. Fitzgerald, a country that is on edge because we have an election in just a few weeks, really. And people are very concerned that there will be another attempt on this man's life. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people come up to me and ask me, I mean, are they going to try to kill him a 3rd time? And I don't really have any way to reassure people. I'm just a talk show host.
Well, it's one thing with Routh writing these letters and this book with a title too long to go into here, where he's some kind of a global citizen, but it just begs to wonder why this information would, in fact, be published. He even refers to natural selection, sort of an element of Darwinism, as if he was selected through some evolutionary process to carry out this act. And of course, if he didn't do it, others should do it for him. So this guy is all over the place. No doubt there's going to be some mental health issues that surface about him that may be part of his defense. Who knows down the line? But this guy he's dangerous, and he's he's not only dangerous in what he tried to do a week and a half ago to President Trump, but the words he's putting out there and now that are available for everyone to see. And real quick, Laura, I was with you after the Nashville shooting, and I wanted that manifesto released, but I said redact any threats to anyone, and that should have been filed here today too.
That's the difference here. That part of it could have been redacted. Matt, in court today, prosecutors said that they intend to ask a grand jury to consider a charge that Routh attempted to assassinate Trump. I mean, isn't that, I mean, why is that even, I don't know why that's a question. I mean, that's kind of obvious, don't you think?
Yeah, well, when they arrested him, obviously they wanted to keep him in jail, and so they filed the firearms charges. Certainly they're going to seek that. They're going to get that. The question is, there's no doubt that everybody wanted this guy detained and kept in jail pending his trial and whatever the ultimate charges are, and he'll probably spend the rest of his life in prison. But at the same time, you just can't put this out in the public so recklessly, really for the whole world to understand that there's now a stated bounty and a number on President Trump's head. This is so outrageous that it's incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, oh, it's like the people have fatwas against them. Now people think, go after Trump and you get another, $250,000. James, we learned something else today, that the shooter, Mr. Routh, was in direct sight in the next hole toward Trump. So they were trying to kind of downplay that earlier on, but he was in the exact place he needed to be to get a clear line of sight of where Trump would be in the next hole. Again, that acting Secret Service director, the first night was like, well, we were effective because the shot didn't go off. But that was almost luck that the shot didn't go off, given the proximity of the barrel of that gun to that next hole.
Yeah, and this isn't a casino where you have to depend on luck to try to win or prevent something bad from happening. And the Secret Service cannot use that logic anymore, or that pretense in terms of protecting this former president and certainly the Republican candidate. This should not have been allowed to happen. And I'm worried too that we're going to have, a Lee Harvey Oswald situation or an Epstein situation where all of a sudden this guy just winds up, being suicided somehow. I think he has a lot of information. I like to follow the money, a lot of tangential connections, which could tell us a whole lot about this guy, who he met with over the years, which may open a lot of doors for us. Believe me, I hope he stays in jail the rest of his life, but I hope he stays alive to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, $68 in his account. Somehow he gets to Ukraine. I don't think any of us could probably swing that. Matt and James, thank you both.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.